All right, welcome back. As I mentioned yesterday, you've got to be buckled in because we are moving and moving fast. In fact, we're a few minutes behind schedule, but I think it's worth it to hear what everybody has to say, and I think this conference is an incredible value to everybody here. So with that, our next destination, Leo. Sir?
Hello, everybody. I'm Phil McAllister from NASA headquarters. Welcome. This is one of my favorite conferences. It's got the word commercial in it, so I really like that. And also now this panel, Commercial LEO Destinations, is obviously something that is occupying a lot of my time. As I've said before, I believe Commercial LEO Destinations is probably the most important commercial human spaceflight program we are going to have for about this next decade. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see how it plays out over that period of time. I know you might be thinking, well, Phil, you oversee the program, so you should be able to ensure how it's going to play out. And one thing I've learned, that's really easy, but one thing I have learned is that nothing is easy in commercial human spaceflight. We are going to need everybody in this room, in the community, to make that successful, which is one of the reasons why I really like this panel. We've got a really good cross-section here of the community to talk about what they're doing and what their concerns are and what they're going to be seeing over this next decade. So I'm going to have to go to the glasses here. So our panelists today, to my right, is Mary Lynn Dittmar. She is the Chief Government and External Relations Officer at Axiom Space. To her right is Eric Stallmer, Executive Vice President for Government Affairs and Public Policy for Voyager Space. Then Angela Weiss, Senior Vice President of Mission Assurance, Sierra Space Corporation. And then batting cleanup, Kathy Leaders, Associate Administrator for the Space Operations Mission Directorate, NASA headquarters. So we'll just go down the aisle here, and we'll start with Mary Lynn.
Thanks, Phil, and thanks to the Commercial Spaceflight Federation for the invitation to be here today. Really appreciate that. I'm here representing Axiom Space, and I threw out my remarks that I was planning to do when I listened to the first couple of panels today because it was such a great lead-in to talk about national security. And I'm going to spend a little time doing that today. It's a little unusual to think about human spaceflight and national security. There's been some tension between those communities for decades and decades. That it's not really a tension, but the United States made a decision pretty early on to kind of partition civil space, national security space. And then, of course, we've had the rise of commercial space, which is now being leveraged both by civil space and by national security space, as well as is beginning to generate all kinds of innovation and new market development of its own. So we now sort of look at this as a three-legged stool that's kind of the basis upon which, United States space policy and leadership is continuing. And I want to talk a bit about the intersection between human spaceflight and national security space. Axiom Space was co-founded by the former ISS program manager, Mike Suffredini, along with Dr. Cam Ghaffarian. And both of them have a very international perspective with regard to both commercial space and national security space, which of course the United States does also, both on the civil side and on the international, national security space. And feel really strongly that for us to secure LEO, continuing to maintain, as is written in legislation now, to ensure continuing American presence in perpetuity in low Earth orbit, that's going to need to be an internationally based effort, one that involves pathways that are being created for international entities to come on board via a commercial space station. But also with regard to our competition in low Earth orbit, which is most notably China. Tiangong is complete. They are flying payloads on a regular basis. The Chinese have entered into, a couple of years ago, a relationship with the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs to essentially open the door toward payload developers around the world and set up what was essentially a come one, come all call for over 1,000 payloads to enter into that program, We've already got U.S. folks who are running companies that are interested in LEO, okay, who have been losing customers to the to the Chinese space station. And so from an Axiom point of view, our belief is that if we can't secure LEO, okay, then we're not going to be able to have a real competition in low Earth orbit. So our interest is in what happens, is like everybody here, okay, our interest in Phil's leadership in the program is what happens at the end of ISS. So one of our worries here is, and again, Phil, all deference to the program that you've sort of kicked off, though what I'm about to say is pretty well known already. You know, what my concern here is, and Axiom's concern here, is that the acquisition approach that we're taking, with all of the benefits of Space Act agreements with which we agree, okay, all the benefits there, which you're not telling companies how to do something, you're just sort of telling them, you know, what it is that they need to achieve. We're concerned that with 4 competitors in the game for very much longer, we're diluting what is only a nascent market, if there is a market. We're diluting business opportunities in low Earth orbit because essentially everybody's chasing the same verticals. And we're worried that without very clear milestones for down select and consolidation, we're actually going to extend the period of time that it takes to get things on low Earth orbit after ISS. From our point of view, from an international point of view, and from a national security space point of view, we have some concerns about that approach. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Mary Lynn. Those great remarks, and thank you, Phil, and CSF and the FAA. I see Kelvin here, and it got me thinking a little bit as we look forward, you know, to what commercial low Earth orbit destinations look like. I think you got to really look to the past a little bit, and I think Phil, you and Kathy have really been integral part of the history of where we're going forward. We would not have commercial LEO destinations if it wasn't for the success that you had with commercial cargo and commercial crew and the other commercial programs that you guys have really steadfast stood behind, and with the leadership. And I know I'm isolating you too, Rick, because you're on the stage, but also NASA as a whole, the leadership that NASA has provided, and especially the leadership on the ISS, and that great platform that has been for the past 20 years. So without that, we could not have the vision and the opportunity that we have looking forward with building these CLDs. And I'm really excited about it from a Voyager perspective as we go down this path of the partnerships that we're making, the progress we're making to develop commercial LEO destinations, and what it really means to be in low Earth orbit, and what are the opportunities. And so from a Voyager perspective, the real quick commercial is, you know, we're a single launch platform. We hope to have 100% of the research capacity on our Starlab as they currently have on the International Space Station, although it'll be about a third of the size. We're looking at a lot of different partnerships all over the world, and I think Mary Lynn hit the nail on the head when she talked about international partnerships. When I think of the ISS, I think the most important thing about the ISS is the I. It is the international component with our European partners, our Asian partners, and all over the world, the work that we're doing. But I really think that we need to expand on that international partnership. I think there's a lot of parties out there that aren't involved, and I think through the development of these CLDs, it's going to open that aperture for work to be done all over the world, and work in critical areas. You know, the microgravity research, the real issues that are affecting our environment today, the challenges that we have, food scarcity and other biological and ag tech issues. I'm really excited that the work that we're doing, and the legacy that we have. We're partnered with NanoRacks, who has one of the richest legacies on working on the International Space Station, working with over 25 different space agencies, getting payloads on and off the International Space Station. So we feel like we've got a great mix of partners. The leadership that we've seen at NASA, it really is truly a partnership. It's as we're going each step of the way, each milestone, we're drawing off that expertise that you guys have through the commercial partnerships that you have done, and the success that you've seen, and where the challenges lie, and that has helped us move forward on that. So Looking forward, I think we're shooting for 2028, and I think I feel really good about that. I feel that the partners that we've brought in and the work that we're doing now is going to be ripe. And I think the lessons learned from the ISS and the rich heritage that ISS has had is going to really enable a huge growth to the LEO economy. So I'm excited about that. And turn it over to you, Angie.
All right, thank you. And thank you for having me and letting me represent Sierra Space here at this conference. For Sierra Space, we already have a commercial cargo contract, and that's our Dream Chaser program. But even if we have a transportation method, we need to have a place to go. So we're in partnership right now with Blue Origin to build an orbital reef. That's a commercial low Earth orbit space station. And it is with these partnerships that we have with NASA, where they're enabling commercial industry to go off and produce something. We've heard already today about how innovation is kind of outpacing some of the policies right now. So what we are doing, both Sierra Space and Blue Origin, is trying to work with NASA to leverage, like you said, the lessons from International Space Station. There's a lot of things that work really well on the space station, and there's a lot of things that we've learned that can enable us to have less maintenance on the space station. Not only just use NASA as a partner up there where they have a place to go, a destination to go, but by having that partnership, we now have a lot more industries that can start coming up to these space stations as well. I don't think we even fully understand the amount of innovation and commerce that's going to happen on a space station when we allow more access up into space. So that's why I'm extremely excited about these low Earth orbit destinations and partnering with our government agencies to help us get started, to tap into their resources. They know more about space than any of us, but then allowing us to still figure out new ways to do things in a commercial way. So thank you. That's Kathy.
So it's always nice to kind of come up at the end because it's nice to hear what everybody's talking about. You know, the reason Phil and I are here is because we have a problem. We want to continue to stay in low Earth orbit. I really appreciated Marilyn's comments because for us, we would like, and we have very concrete exploration, research, human goals to be able to continue to be able to work and live in LEO. What we don't know yet is exactly how. and that's where these discussions are really, really important for us to continue to have. We're trying a couple of different ways. Actually, Eric bringing up commercial cargo and crew, yes, those I think were relatively successful models and we're still working through that, but we still need to know how to do commercial LEO destinations, how to do our other activities that we have going forward. And so this is really the time where we need to be listening. We need to talk about our problems that we have. We need to be here, and we're here to help us solve the problems. And the problems are on multiple levels, right? We, as a service buyer, still need to figure out how to deal with the regulatory issues that are out there, the other framework issues that we've talked about probably numerous times. But we also want to hear how to best support our exploration partners that we have within the agency, our international partners that we have out there, and be able to support, obviously, our national goals to continue to learn and work in LEO. So I love being on these panels. I'm really looking forward to hearing the questions that folks have and the information that's gained from them as we go forward. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks, everybody. Those were great comments. I really, you know, it seems like whenever we have these panels and a lot of the questions are like, well, what about this problem and what about this problem? And Kathy, you made a great point that we ought to at least just take a minute to acknowledge where we are as an industry. You know, we have commercial cargo capabilities. Anybody can buy transportation for cargo to low Earth orbit. We have commercial crew capability. Anybody can buy a ticket and go to low Earth orbit in space, going to a private company for the first time in human history. And once we get Boeing certified, first time in human history that any country will have two independent means to get humans to space. I'm really looking forward to that. and we're actually working on destinations. Angie, you made a great point. You need all three of those things, really, to have an ecosystem. And the fact that we're working on that last leg of that stool, I think is really exciting. Are there challenges? Oh my gosh, we would need a whole nother hour to talk about all the challenges, but we ought to really take a moment to just embrace where we are today and the progress that we made before we start fussing about the challenges. So anyway, that's really good. I always like to hear questions from the audience because you never know what they're going to be, and they're usually kind of curveballs. And it is good to know what sort of you guys are thinking out in the industry. I have some questions, but if we've got any from the audience now, let's go ahead and bring them out. And if you guys are thinking about questions, please bring them forward. Not yet, okay. So that means I got to kick in here. So the first question I would have is a word that we've heard multiple times now. I think everybody used it, was the word partnerships. Obviously, the NASA private sector partnership is important. And that is one of the cool aspects of what we are having right now. I think both Eric and Angie mentioned it, is being able to share the 50 years of human spaceflight experience we have at NASA with our partners, and having them take those lessons and apply some of their own current knowledge and experience and capabilities and coming up with something totally new that we haven't even thought of. That has been really gratifying to see that interaction and that partnership. So what I'd like to ask everybody, even Kathy at the end there, are what, obviously, other than the public-private partnership that we have with commercial cargo or commercial LEO destinations, what other partnerships are you guys really emphasizing and leveraging going forward and feel like are important to make CLDs successful?
So I can go ahead and start. I mean, obviously, we have a partnership just with Blue Origin and Sierra Space. So two aerospace companies coming together to build one space station, and being able to see that two industries can come together like that and build a space station. But also, we are leveraging not only our NASA partnership and their knowledge, but to make this commercial, we need to have additional customers. So we're looking at biopharma, we're looking at the partners and making sure that they understand the benefits of space so that they know that they can come to our space station, and that's what will continue to make them viable. So public, private, and then just going out into industry and making sure that they fully understand the capability and why they really need to go to space.
From our perspective, it starts with you. It starts with NASA, really. When you have the meatball on your side as that partner, that's the good housekeeping seal, whether it be to investors or to corporations that want to be a part of this. And so we're looking at this from a unique perspective because it's going to take all different types of partnerships. And those partnerships, as we look at, there's actually math involved with here, that NASA's only funding so much of this. It's really going to be a small percentage that NASA's going to be funding of the space station. So we need, all of our industries need to go out and raise capital to do this. So some of the unique partnerships that we looked at is one looking just from an engineering perspective and a technical assistance. We're working with Airbus. We think the value of a transatlantic partnership is critical, is key. It leverages the expertise that Airbus brings with their rich heritage, working on the station, and now with the Gateway. But it brings in and ties in the European Space Agency and the great work that the European Space Agency's done, and their astronauts. And their astronauts are going to need a place to go. So that, I think, is just a critical and crucial partnership, and a great partnership so far to be working with them. Another kind of out-of-the-box partnership that we have is with Hilton Hotels. Hilton has really been involved in space and has really been not as much involved in space, but have had a desire to be in space going back to the Apollo era. They really, truly want to be the first hotel in space. And so we're working with Hilton on designing, the habitat that the crew is going to live in, and what's the accommodations going to be. But it's not just like, mints on the pillow type of things. It's the detailed work, the the germs, killing the germs, microbial, bacterial research that they have done. Partnership, see, NASA's always there to help me and bail me out. So it's things like that to make this experience. If people are going to be able to long duration space flight, you want to make it as comfortable as possible. And I think Hilton has a great reputation in that comfort area. And we've also partnered with research parks. What's going to be critical, I think, for all these space stations, each one are going to be purpose-driven, but we see the research that's going to be done. And so we've partnered with Ohio State University to do a terrestrial research, an analog research park right in Ohio, and working with the International Research Parks Associations on what type, the value of the research that can be done, but also looking at ag tech and other areas. So I'll defer to Mary.
So I'd certainly add, double down on the relationship and the partnership with NASA. We're in the middle of a rolling CDR right now. Our shell for our first module is complete. Actually, it's on the floor at Thales Alenia in Italy, and we're going through the CDR for the first and second module, which are essentially clones of each other. And we're doing that absolutely side by side with NASA. Our contract's not a Space Act agreement. It's a little bit different. It's actually a commercial data buy where we provide basically the data that we're developing to NASA. NASA has to make modifications to the ISS in order to be able to accept our modules. And so it's a very clear partnership and a very close partnership. And we get tremendous value from it. So thanks again, of course, to NASA and the work that we're doing there. Our next partner that I want to talk about is SpaceX. We have a great partnership with SpaceX. SpaceX is our provider, actually, for the first floor private astronaut flights. You saw the video here on AX-1. We're getting ready to fly AX-2, right now targeted for not earlier than May of this year, so right around the corner. And so SpaceX is our provider for that. And they're a tremendous partner. We benefit from the the expertise that they've developed through the Commercial Crew Program, and it's been terrific to be able to work with them. We have additional partners, largely I mentioned before, international. For me, one of the really fun things with this current era in the development of commercial LEO destinations harkens back to my days at Boeing. When I did oversaw systems subsystems integration for about half the assembly flights. We were also doing a lot of work then thinking about commercial developments, that could be done on the ISS, and sort of trying to pioneer these new business models, which were like business to business, business to government to business, business to government to business to government, and seeing all of that happen now and being able to do it in this context is fascinating. So, for example, we've signed an MOU with Italy. And we're involved in a working group with Italy, where Italy is actually looking across all of their country to look at industries that may be interested in entering into microgravity. So how can we help them, right? Sort of think about that based on also our experience, and then also sort of provide access to them to be thinking about our modules capabilities as we sort of develop that. We're flying an Italian astronaut, or we hope to be flying an Italian astronaut. He's currently on the backup crew, actually, for AX-2 from the Italian Air Force. So the approach that Italy is taking is interesting. It's broad-based. It's in the Italian Air Force, then also sort of looks across some aspects of civil society as well as commercial development there. So we're seeing, in a way, sort of the legacy of all the work that NASA did on the International Space Station, sort of now flowing down and sort of giving us this opportunity to sort of create these new sorts of partnerships and relationships. And we have several of those going actually around the globe. So these partnerships are absolutely crucial to the development both of the work that we're doing and also, again, the stuff I talked about before with regard to continuing to build international alliances beyond the initial tremendous revolutionary work, actually, that was done with the International Space Station, being able to sort of extend that legacy and open up opportunities for more nations to come to low Earth orbit.
Hey, I'm going to kind of come from a totally different perspective. I actually feel like, selfishly, from a NASA perspective, these kind of partnerships allow us to provide new experiences to our employees. And we're all in a talent fight right now. And one of the things that we can do and we can tell people is, obviously as an agency, we've been able to work on really cool stuff for 50 years. But now with the way we're working with industry and different and academic institutions, we have the ability through these unique partnerships to be able to give our employees, selfishly, a really great wealth of experience. And if you're working for the Commercial LEO destination program right now, you get to work with a bunch of really cool companies and be able to see their innovation, along with obviously working as a space station program, continuing to evolve our on-orbit capabilities. One of the neatest things I got to experience was listening to a co-op do their out briefing and talked about doing entry, descent, and landing with 3 different spacecrafts and a winged vehicle. I'm telling you, no other company can offer that experience to anybody else. So let me just say we're looking for our pathway internships right now, and I'll do my plug there. But I also feel like us having that workforce that can work on these problems ensures then that we can be there to help you solve your problems in the future. And so what we've all been talking about, Angie brought it up in the green room, she said, you know what, when we have a problem, we can go to NASA and say, can you give us any information you have on QDs or batteries, or what did you do to go solve that particular problem? And for us to continue to be that source of information and to continue to be, to me, the premier space agency, very selfishly saying that out there, it's us having these experiences and being able to work on these types of things. So I feel like these kinds of partnerships, Bob talked about a whole series of different kinds of partnership that gave those people working those programs the ability to be able to learn from that whole vast set of industry that's out there, is really selfishly also helping us grow a really great set of NASA talent that you all are all stealing from us, but that's okay. We're gonna get them all back again and then cycle through again, so thank you.
All right, thanks, Kathy. That was a great answer, by the way. Not just saying that because you're my boss, but it was a good answer. It's interesting, Kathy, you're really touching on kind of a cultural shift that we had in the agency that we don't talk a lot about. I will tell you that as we were sort of implementing some of these commercial partnerships, there was a lot of hand-wringing within NASA that we would just become contract monitors, right? That we were just outsourcing all of this cool work to industry. And that was a concern of our workforce. And I would tell you, I would have to confirm what Kathy said, it has turned out to be the reverse. I am constantly, not fighting, but constantly working with all the other programs that need these expertise that we have at NASA, and they're becoming just super, super valuable within the agency. You know, we might only have a couple dozen, not even a dozen, fracture control people that really know that area, or parachute experts, and they get to work on all these different systems, and they become critical subject matter experts that we can then leverage to the entire industry. It has turned out to be the actual reverse of what we were concerned about, and it's turned out to be a real benefit, so I really like that. I'll have one more question. I don't know, do we have any audience ones yet?
We do. I don't know.
All right, well, I got one more first before we go to that, Karina, which is, oh, wait a second. I just forgot what it was.
It was a good one.
Yeah, it was a really good one. Oh, I got it. It came to me. I knew it would come. So Marilyn mentioned the contract that we have with Axiom. We actually signed that in 2020. And then when we asked for proposals for the commercial destinations free flyers, that was sort of early to mid 2021. Very different global economic situation, right? I think we've all seen it in our personal finances, right? Oh, my 401k, it's up. Oh my God, it's down. It's up, it's down. Let's go on a vacation, let's not. And that kind of has whipshawed us. I think it's even more critical for our private sector partners because they not only have to get investment, as Eric said, we're not paying the whole way for these destinations, probably even a small portion. So they have to get investors, but it also affects their customer base. Obviously, as much as we have made significant progress, it is still expensive to do things in space. So it affects your customers and your markets as well. So if I could, just for the industry participants, how has the global economic outlook and current situation change? How has that affected your overall efforts in the CLDs?
So just an observation, which is that global economic changes have very often the same effect on nations that they do on companies, which is that they tend to sharpen competition. So from a company point of view, as Phil mentioned, people compete for investors, right? I mean, we all compete for investors. And so investors are concerned. Jeff Mamber and I were on a panel with the chamber a few months ago, and Jeff expressed a real concern that we may be losing a next generation of investors just because of the global economic issues. And there's been a downturn in the space. I mean, in terms of the investment portfolio, you know, in terms of value. And so concerns about that. What we're seeing internationally is that countries are aware of that and are beginning to kind of look at each other in terms of what investment they're making, what engagement they're having with commercial entities that are destined for low Earth orbit. And I would imagine everyone is seeing this. I think this is not a thing that's not specific to Axiom Space. So as is often the case in situations like this, you know, you'll see companies that'll do things like pull back from marketing or pull back from investment or pull back from business development because they're a little concerned about the economic outlook. And then you'll see other companies that will look at that and go, no, 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 no. We're going to double down on marketing. We're going to double down on business development. We're going to double down on pursuing those opportunities. And we're seeing that. I'm going to tell you that's the perspective we're taking. But also we're seeing that among nations. So it's really interesting to kind of watch all of that play out right now.
No, certainly echoing what Mary Lynn said. There are challenges out there in the financial markets. I think some of the challenges that were in 2021 with, you know, a lot of companies going public, some companies that maybe weren't ready or poised to go public, and the impact that's having on some investors. But I think, you know, we're casting a little wider net than historically. You know, so often, and I think, you know, there's probably a good statistic on this, but from like 2014 to about 2020, how much of the investment in the commercial sector was from the U.S.? It was a really high number. I think it was about 75% or so. And that's not the case anymore. I think you're seeing a lot of international investment from the Middle East, from Europe, from Asia. And you just got to, you know, be willing to cast that net and go, you know, meet with people and explain what you're doing and what's the value added for them. You know, what's in it for them. This, you know, we're working with NASA on the space station. We're looking forward to having NASA astronauts, and we'll figure out how many and when and for how long. But we're also looking at international, you know, like ESA astronauts and maybe UAE astronauts and Azerbaijan and all these countries around the world, because everyone has a yearning to be in space. And I think that's the benefit that we're seeing. You know, as you look, you know, wider and you look at that space is really a global economy. I think that's kind of that, you know, as we look at challenges, I see that as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to help change humanity and grow humanity. The challenges that we have on Earth, a lot of these problems can be solved through space.
And I agree with both of you. I think there's actually opportunities still to get those investments, but there's a couple of things that we have to show. One, by having that partnership with NASA, it gives confidence with our investors so that they know that we have this deep wealth of knowledge behind us. But it also requires us to really focus on performance. We have to deliver on our results. And I think that is what's really causing us as commercial companies to become more innovative. Because if we're not delivering, we're not going to get those investments. So it is allowing us, it's forcing us to really focus on success.
Okay, very good. We'll go to audience questions now.
Excellent. Am I on it? Great. Okay. Can the panel respond to the importance of intellectual property rights that are enabled via CLD and how that impacts their investment strategies and focuses on customers?
Had to get a question from a lawyer, obviously, so that's a good one. I'm going to hand that over to you guys.
Well, I'll just jump on it since I don't know if I'm the China Hawk on the panel, but I am a China Hawk. If you want to go fly on the Chinese space station, so I always tell everybody, check your IP at the door. The hatch. I think I don't want to speak for all the companies, but I imagine all the companies are highly sensitive to IP considerations. I mean, you know, we know that for investors to be able to put money into stations or into aspects of stations or into industries that are interested in putting money into stations, okay, they're all very concerned about IP. And so, of course, we're doing everything we can to both physically protect it and then protect it in the cyber domain. How it is that all that's going to be managed, security is a huge, huge, huge issue. How it is that you're going to essentially sequester data and make sure that it's protected, whether it's resident in the cloud or resident physically on a station or resident in a downlink or wherever it's living. Basically, that's a huge issue. So absolutely, at least certainly in Axiom Space, we spend time figuring out how it is that we're going to manage that, and then that's part of all of our contracts, right? That's standard, frankly, in business contracts that you're going to see. You're going to see certainly language associated to IP protection. So that's certainly present in all of our business dealings.
Pretty much similar to what Mary Lynn said, and it's always a question that comes up in negotiations, and I always default to some great advice I got from my career in the Army, CYA, which means different things to different people, but for me it was call your attorney. So I'll defer to our counsel on a lot of those issues, but it's certainly an issue that everyone's looking at, and especially as you go through these partnerships, and it's challenging and it's tricky, as you walk down and the enthusiast of all of us, when we're getting together and like, we can build this station, we can do all this, and then you get, dare I say, the lawyers and the contracts people get in the room, and then things get a little more harried. So, but I think we're all working through those issues, and it is a top priority for everyone.
I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Karina?
All right, I've got more.
Okay, go.
All right. In the transition from ISS to the next CLD, what do you foresee as being the top challenges in accomplishing that transition? And do you think those challenges can be overcome in time for the ISS's eventual retirement and deorbiting?
So I'll start, even though I'm not a panelist, I'm going to pull the moderator card. The biggest challenge, and I've said this to our partners, and I think I've also mentioned this publicly, is that we have to stop thinking that we're building a space station. You're building a business, right? That is a very, very different prospect than just building a piece of space hardware, which is hard enough as it is, especially a piece of human spaceflight hardware. That's one of the hardest things we do. But in this case, this has to work as a business. NASA is not going to be able to close the business case for all of these companies. So you have to think about that development effort. I think that's the biggest challenge, is getting out of the mindset that we are building a space station and get into the mindset that we are building a business that has to work financially, legally, as well as technically in order to make this work. And when I step back and I look at the grand picture, that's one of my thoughts is one of the challenges we've got going forward.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that the engineering is actually the least difficult part of this. I mean, it's not that it's not difficult, it's very difficult. Anybody that's been in this business knows that, in their bones. But it's the building the business aspect. And one of the challenges for businesses, of course, is uncertainty, right? That's the worst thing you can do. It's like, I'd rather have a really poor investment outlook that I could be sure of than a totally unpredictable outlook with regard to anything. And so one of the things that I think we're collectively concerned about is regulatory uncertainty. We're worried about, for example, mission authorization. I can do an hour on it. I promise I won't. But the whole issue of, how is it that all of that's going to be managed on orbit for commercial entities? This is an ongoing concern. It's been a political football. It's getting kicked back and forth between agencies, and it's one that we really need to come to resolution on in the United States. I can sort of go through the whole list of regulatory issues. I have a fun one right now, which is I went to the State Department and said, okay, I'm going to launch a module. It's going to attach to the space station. Do I have to register under the Outer Space Treaty? Under what circumstances am I guided by the IGA? Under what circumstances am I not? What happens when I become a free flyer? What happens in terms of change of state? Okay, Phil, I'm making your day. Okay, but the bottom line, I mean, those things, a lot of this is just really new territory. And so the law and the regulation don't exist yet, right, in order to be able to sort of create that certainty. So these are things that we're all going to have to contend with.
I don't hear the word challenge. I like to think of them as opportunities to excel in a lot of these areas. And Mary, she had the list, and I could add the 6 or 7 additional things to them. Here's the nice thing. This is a total ecosystem. You're spot on, Phil. This is a business, but we're all in this together. We can't get to low Earth orbit without lift, right? So if the launch companies have issues, we have issues. If there's spectrum issues, we have issues. So That's the benefit of maybe, here's a little plug for CSF and the other trade associations out there, that this is an opportunity to represent the industry on the issues that we have. We've worked, for years, when I was at CSF, working closely with the FAA on launch and regulatory reform, and they've been a great partner. So each steps along the way, whether it's mission assurance or mission authority, and all the other things, working with State Department, working with Commerce Department, remote sensing issues, they're all our issues. So we're all in this together on these opportunities that we have going forward in the next 5 years. And so because I think what the biggest thing is, none of us want to see a gap. None of us want to see a gap in humans in low Earth orbit. So we're all working together. And I would say we all do work together. Mary Lynn and I have been going at it for 12 years, working together on you find your common ground and working with Blue Origin and Redwire and Sierra and all the other partners that we have that we're not going to get there alone. We got to work together on some of these issues. And again, the partnerships with the government and the relationships we have with these government agencies have really been streamlined. But there are opportunities to excel in some of these areas.
So many opportunities. Yep. So we have opportunities for sure. When I think about what I do, I work in mission assurance, and spaceflight's inherently risky. So I spend most of my day looking at how we can build the safest and most reliable destination. That's the design part. That's a solvable problem. In most cases, we can figure out what can go wrong and how we can design around it. But we are no longer going to rely on the NASA human rating process by the book. How do we do that commercially? How do we change how we're going to go human rate something and still have it acceptable for NASA or any other government entity? And that's that negotiation process that's a little uncertain right now. So that's a challenge we have. But to your point, we're all working together because we have a deadline. We have to have another capability up there before the ISS is decommissioned. And we all know that when you have a deadline, you're going to work harder to meet that. So by having that end goal in sight, I think we're going to get there together. But what's safe enough is something that I deal with every day.
I know what one of Kathy's biggest challenges is, and that's making the chat function work on her teams. So I can just answer that for her.
Oh man, you're like, sheesh. We've got real things we need to do in LEO. And so our big challenge, honestly, is how do you make sure that the researchers, our academic partners, our exploration partners are continuing to get their work done on a LEO platform. And we got this beautiful LEO platform right now that's amazing. And it takes time to be able to get the work established, years to get those experiments and protocols and everything work through. And we are going to have to figure out how to do that on the International Space Station, while at the same time we're legitimately transitioning also to these new LEO destinations. And we also want to be able to do it in a way that doesn't necessarily tie the hands of the new providers. It's a big challenge. Robin yesterday talked about the work that we want to continue to do in LEO, and us coming up with our strategies for how we're going to continue the national lab work, continue to look at what are the exploration goals that we want to be working on. And we have to figure out how to work and do flexible science. We've been working with the Science Mission Directorate on how do we do flexible science, continue to do it on the International Space Station, but also be thinking about how you could potentially do it on different platforms moving forward. And so this is an area that, we have a team at headquarters that's obviously working with the commercially, Space Division and the International Space Station Program Office to make sure that as seamlessly as possible, we're able to transition this critical work that we are supporting across the platform. So it's going to be a very, very critical job for us because we don't want to lose the science. We don't want to lose the continued exploration, technology development, human research work that we're doing that's so critical, or supporting our different institutional and other agencies' work and continuing to provide this really critical service to the U.S. that we've been building up for so long.
All right, we're getting the hook, so sorry, we got to go. Thank you for the panelists. This was great, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody. Have a great conference.